Hello, hey, welcome to SquatConf 2016. Those of you who managed to get up early in the fucking morning. So this is supposed to be about how to ruin a community in 3 easy steps. Something about CJDNS. It's kind of crap because every time I promise that I'm going to talk about CJDNS in my lecture, and then every time I get like distracted and I have these other ideas, and then I go off on a tangent. And this time, I ended up like talking about ANCAPs, which, for those of you who don't know, and that picture didn't come out very well. For those of you who don't know, there are these people, and they have this idea that basically because monopoly is bad and violence is bad, and because the state is like a monopoly on violence, so we should just abolish the state. And then, like, everything will be okay, and there won't be any monopolies or violence. So, where does this shit come from? Well, let's look at, like, what do they do? Like, they start with smash the state, right? And this is kind of the basic pillar of, like, every radical ideology ever. I mean, destroy the state is kind of what makes an ideology radical in the beginning, right? And there's kind of a lot of technology on how to destroy the state. People know how to do it now. And you would think that if ANCAPs got nothing else right, they would get this one, but somehow they actually managed to invent the worst possible way to overthrow a state. Their idea is that they're just going to try to get everybody to stop paying their taxes, and then hopefully the government will just be like, oh darn, we ran out of money, I guess we have to close down now. Now, governments, states are actually quite a bit like organisms. Organizations are like organisms. When they are hungry, when they are starved, they start to get really violent. So that's kind of not the way that you want to overthrow a state, even if that's what you want to do. And so after their wonderful overthrow of the state by getting everybody to just stop paying their taxes, that they're going to leave a power vacuum. And if you ask an ANCAP what will fill this power vacuum, you know what they're going to tell you? The market. And so they're going to make like, question and answer, please. You'll throw me off. So the idea is that like they're going to make these privatized police forces and like privatized courts and stuff. And now to go over their platform, they also have this idea of this inalienable right to contract. Now, it's really interesting to me because I think it actually explains a lot about black hat hackers, especially North American black hats, because they have this idea that like if you bust a server, if you bust a computer, then actually that's kind of okay because all you did was just kind of communicate with that server and you didn't really do anything wrong. Now, if you think about it, if you put like a secret Trojan horse into a computer and it springs out at the right moment and then like busts somebody's shit, that's like jail time illegal. But if you write a contract, if you're a lawyer and you write a contract that has like a secret Trojan horse in it and then that shit busts out like in the heat of courtroom battle and ruins them, that's completely okay. So actually, I think that's why hackers were confused about this shit. And I mean, to be clear, I don't think that we should scrap laws against just pawning people's shit, but I do think that we ought to kind of apply them to lawyers too. Another thing that ANCAPs are big on is this concept of private property, like the idea that everything should be property. Now, something that's really important about property is that the concept of like owning a piece of land is not something that comes from nature. It's not like the concept of gravity or inertia. Owning a piece of land actually just means that you have this community-wide agreement that one is permitted to do certain things on that land that they would not otherwise be permitted to do. And ANCAPs kind of internalized this concept of property, and they started to think that it was like this indivisible atom around which the whole of economic physics is built. But really, it's actually just an agreement. It's a community-wide agreement. So the next thing that makes ANCAPs really kind of amusing is that they're really interested in this market thing. And this spreads to ANCAPs, neoliberals, and like this whole area of capitalist type people. And the market, when you think about it, it's actually a really interesting thing because it finds efficient constructs and promotes them, and that's really a powerful thing. And now you might think of the market kind of like a crystal, because crystals also have really interesting powers. They can like refract light, and they can be used like as a semiconductor, and they look really cool, and there's a lot of things you can do with crystals. And then there's this kind of group of people that start assuming that because crystals can do kind of neat shit, that they can also have other powers, like to make you be able to see the future and telepathy and cure cancer and a whole bunch of other shit. So similarly to crystals, the market has these interesting and powerful properties, and then ANCAPs look at this and they make the same kind of logical leap that it's capable of doing other random things. So when you ask like basic questions like, okay, who's going to build the roads, who's going to enforce the laws and like set up the water grid, they just kind of wave their hands and say, oh, the market. So basically the market is a crystal. So the next thing that ANCAPs have, and this might actually be the most hilarious part of ANCAP theory, is that they have this thing called the NAP. So after the state is somehow starved to death and everything is private property and all the cops and judges are basically turned into Blackwater, the only thing that's protecting the weak from the strong is like the NAP, and that stands for non-aggression principle. And that means, it's important to note that means not non-violence principle. That just means non-aggression. So if you like walk on my land, hey, you're aggressing me, and if I shoot you, then that's just retaliation. That's okay. So now let's ignore the fact that the NAP doesn't have any answer to things like pollution, unless somebody just owns the air, and they probably would want somebody to own the air. And let's ignore the fact that, yeah, an air blockchain. Let's do this shit. And let's ignore the fact that the NAP like really falls apart. And the fact that like it doesn't have any, it's not nonviolence, so it doesn't handle retaliation. It allows retaliation, which is a huge problem when people are going to interpret it differently. So what one person thinks is a violation, another person thinks is A-okay, and like then you have kind of Afghanistan. But where the NAP really actually falls apart is that when you ask who's going to enforce it. So like after the state is gone and there's nothing left and everything is corporations or warlords or whatever you want to call them, and if you ask an ANCAP who's actually going to enforce the NAP, you know what he's going to say to you? The market! So basically the NAP is like the Geneva Convention, except without the part about being humane. Now, the answer that ANCAPs and neoliberals in general have given to communists over the years has been that like, it would be cool if everybody could live together in harmony and shit, but that's just not going to happen in the real world because, you know, markets and stuff. I think the opposite is actually true. I think capitalism is more something that's kind of an evolutionary accident, which is just here until communism manages to figure out its shit and how to prevent corruption. The ANCAPs really like to cite Darwin and talk about, yeah, survival of the fittest and all this sort of shit. But I also like to cite Darwin, and I like to point out that like you can be really fit by just stealing from capitalists. I mean, they're not that organized, and defending the right to defending the property rights of other capitalists is not really in their own rational self-interest. So you can't expect them to fight back in any meaningful way. And lastly, they're kind of dumb. So for me, I would call that like the perfect crime. But to be clear, I would never advocate just popping corporations and selling them back their leak data. That would be unethical, even if it's kind of funny. I think we should really what we really need is to be able to pull together and like be able to build like a list, a way for us to come to agreement about what we are going to do so that we can concentrate all of our resources against one company, one person, the worst company in the world, that we can agree is the worst company in the world, and we're going to concentrate all of our resources against that CEO. And if we can do that, then that person will step down. And I'm not even talking about illegal shit. We can do this without breaking the law. If we concentrate all of our protest energy against one CEO, then we will win that struggle, and that person will step down. And after that, the game will just never be the same again, because they will know that if they step in our way, if they are oppressing good communists, then they're going to get in deep shit. Questions? The market. Does the market have any questions? I'll sell the first question for... All right, the question is, can we have Unicode on the IRC client? Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, I should be better at speaking. And basically, the fact is that I am on a really tenuous position when I'm speaking, and I can be thrown off my train of thought, and then for like 10 or 15 seconds, I'll be going, where was I? So yeah, that's why I get really kind of upset with interruptions when I'm doing that. But most of the time, I'm not, and it's like really only when I'm doing the performance. But when I'm giving sort of a lecture like what I did yesterday, interruptions totally cool because I'm just making up as I go. And yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting point of view. You're breaking the nap. Did you guys hear that story about the ANCAP who got dragged out of a out of a Greek anarchist squat, and like as they're dragging him down the stairs, he's like, "You're breaking the nap." Go ahead. Make reference for everybody who's watching or who's here. There's a great video about this and other things. It's called I War, like I as an I, your eye, and war as one word. And my understanding of the CyberSyn system was that it actually worked fairly well. It stopped working when there was a coup d'etat, because coup d'etats cause lots of things to stop working. But can it work is the question. And I think that, yes, some sort of capital-ish system can work and a sort of commune-ish system can work. But the fundamental thing to understand is that it's dirty. You can't model everything. The real world, you have to make exceptions. You have to understand that the world is more complex than your model will ever be able to handle. And so you have to have what you might call forgiveness. Yeah. I don't think that you're getting on the record very well, but I'll just try to recap a little bit what you guys said. Cybernetics, it's important to understand that it's not like brains and stuff. What defines cybernetics is that it's a self-regulating system. It's a closed loop. It feeds back. And I don't know how to put into words what you said. Sorry. Yeah. Also, and this is something what you said brings me to think about the difference between the thinking in terms of right and wrong versus thinking in terms of humane. So the United States is really popular for saying, thinking very much in terms of right and wrong. You are wrong, you will go to jail, we don't care about you anymore because you have violated the covenant and so on. And that system is very brittle because defining right and wrong in some cases can become very hard, and then that system will break down under those circumstances. And in other countries and in other societies, there is much more of an emphasis on being humane and trying to rehabilitate, or if somebody does wrong, and the idea of right versus wrong is much more blurry, and it's accepted that it's blurry. It's in the real world, it's always blurry, but in some societies they try to really nail it down with lawyers and with these systems, and that's also a feature of ANCAP type societies. Bug. A forgiveness market. Yeah. I want to make a market of markets and then sell it to ANCAPs. Go ahead. Yeah, any purity of any ideology leads to totalitarian. I totally agree. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Oh, right. Indulgences. Yeah, it was a captive market by a monopoly. I'll forgive y'all more than the church will if you pay me. I'll be cheaper than the church. You know, I'm more forgiving. My forgiveness is A+ top quality. If you don't believe me, just ask me. Right, a market for forgiveness validators. What do I think about Bitcoin? So, full disclosure, I own Bitcoin. What do I think about it? I think that it is effectively a state, or an excellent term that I heard yesterday from a really smart guy was parastatal entity, because it's similar to a state, but it isn't a full state. So the idea that my thinking about Bitcoin is that it is partially a state, but it is missing some of the key aspects that you need in order for a state to protect itself and to continue to exist. So you see these problems that come up with Bitcoin, like there's no way to finance the development of the open source software, and so anybody can just slip their own stuff into that software, and their motives may not be aligned with the Bitcoin community. That is a bug in Bitcoin, and it exists because they didn't want to put together an entire state apparatus, largely because the systems which a state has in order to protect itself were seen by some of the Bitcoin creators as mechanisms of oppression. So it's, in my opinion, it's a parastatal entity. It's missing some of the self-preservation functions that states have. It is interesting. I don't have like good, evil sort of opinions of it. I think that it has, as Assange said, it has a great potential to become a totalitarian regime, essentially, the Bitcoin blockchain. Interesting technology, although we mostly understood it before, but it's bringing that technology to other people. And also, I'd like to quote Vinny and say that Bitcoin is bringing, is teaching realism to libertarians, and he said, and I'll also quote him and say, if these people would be good enough to grow the hell up and become anarchists like normal people, then maybe they would understand that they would get serious about regulating central authority instead of daydreaming that it's going to somehow cease to exist. That was a paraphrase. Does that answer your question? Yeah. I mean, I don't really perceive entities as good or evil at that scale. Yes, definitely. But I think Bitcoin will also teach things to ANCAPs. It taught things to me. And also, full disclosure, is I used to be a libertarian, which was to say that I thought there should be very limited government, not no government, but very limited government and property and markets. Because, you know, it all sounds so good on paper. But actually where it broke down for me was the fact that you can't point to a libertarian Norway. There is no libertarian utopian society that actually works. How are we for time? 1 minute. Okay, who's up? Okay. Yeah, okay. Is there anything? Is there anything that do you need anything here? Should I just keep talking until you're set? Okay, let me swap. So. Yeah, come on up.